Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 244. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 22nd of the 6th month in the year of our Lord 2023. Yes, it is a Thursday. And on Thursday, that would be Nakita Graham. I think I just saw you there. I saw you. On Thursday, we're doing Thursday Talks. That's what we do over here on the Your Audio is Bad. All right, let's see if we could fix some of that. Does this help? Does that help? Is the audio any better now? Any better audio now? I hope you're hearing well. I'm streaming live right now on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube also. If you're looking for this on YouTube, Nathan Springer over on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you ever miss any of the lives, and we are on live 244, so if this is your first live, you could assume how many lives you have missed, and they are over there on my YouTube channel along with other videos too. Some conversations I've had with other people, prominent figures, other figures. Conversations are supposed to be piling up there, but time is such an interesting thing the way it goes. So yeah, it's a Thursday and we're talking. That's what we do on a Thursday. Talk about whichever topic is inside of the chat, whatever questions or comments the chat has, whatever discussions you all are looking to have, we discuss. Now, the topic of the week, you know, Trinidad seems to have a topic of the week. It's a week, and you know, I think some of it, information sales, yes or no. I'm not sure what you're talking about there to say yes or no to it, but I think part of it may have to do with the size of Trinidad and Tobago too. The size of Trinidad and Tobago allows for some of that, where everyone could be up to date with the same unitary bacchanal across the entire country. There was the wet man in a previous week. Now there are books. I mean, it's one thing or the other. This week it seems to be the books. My view is everyone has their right to do it. The bookstore could bring in the book if they want, and they could tell their customers they don't give an F if they want. That's their prerogative. But it's also the customer's prerogative to say, I don't think I would like to support a store that has books introducing children to out of the norm sexuality. It's up to parents to say that. And you know, if you think about it like this, if it's back in the days of a video store, and some people seem, because it's a book, some people seem to I see someone with the rainbow is on the inside. Because it's a book, some people don't understand the gravity of the content. If you imagine a video store and someone has a documentary inside that video store where they introduce children to sexuality in a documentary aimed at children, many people would also kick a fuss for that. So I don't think it's a strange thing to see that people are upset over it. It's expected. Do you think you would ever patronize RIK again after the book that they are allowing? You know, I've never been much of a fan of that particular bookstore. I find a lot of their things are overpriced in the first place, and you know, I think not. Here's the way I see it. You have a very limited amount of resources you could spend, and there are an infinite amount of places and opportunities for you to spend those resources. And if it's a matter of where I see certain companies heading in terms of direction, I think I'd rather to spend my coin on companies that by and large are heading in better directions. And you know, some people are pointing out that Netflix promotes this, and many of the people that are talking about boycotting this bookstore are subscribed to Netflix. And I mean, Netflix had Cuties. For those of you who know what Cuties the movie was, that was some disturbing stuff. But yeah, Netflix and every single Netflix show has something to do with the community. So it's not something strange. If you're boycotting this bookstore, are you going to boycott Netflix? And I understand where people are coming from when they point out what seems to be a double standard there. But I think the actual issue here is that this is something that is actually within the reach for people. So whether a Trini uses Netflix or not is going to be inconsequential to Netflix. It's not going to have a change on anything really pertaining to Netflix. But a bookstore inside of Trinidad and Tobago, a country where you have to go and shop at the bookstore for your book list every term you're at a bookstore. It's something that is within your reach to do something about. It's like, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Bud Light issue that happened over in the United States, where the Bud Light beer, which was the #1 beer in the United States, they partnered with a TikTok influencer who was on the very strange side of things, and so strange that many people didn't like it. And then also this TikTok star seemed to be focused a lot on a younger audience. So to be advertising beer and already some what seems to be deviant, obviously out of the norm behavior. And out of the norm isn't an insult. Out of the norm is obvious. The norm is heterosexuality. If you're outside the norm, you're just outside the norm, right? And many people were upset about that. And the thing is, with a bear, it was something very easy to do. All someone had to do was, when they go to the bar, instead of reaching for this bear, reach for the one next to it. And I mean, if we're being honest, most of those bears don't have a massive difference in taste. It's not a very difficult thing to do. So it was something within the reach for people to do, and people did it. Bud Light crashed. Their stock crashed, their sales crashed because of it, because it was within reach. And I think that's similar to what's happening with the bookstore here in Trinidad and Tobago. It seems like something that is within the reach of people. It's something where I could have gone and bought books inside of this bookstore, and now I could not go there, and it might be something that they could feel. I could express my displeasure in a way that people would notice. I guess this feeling is something comparable to how socialists feel when they participate in a capitalist system. Probably. Let children be children and grow and have experiences as children. That's not the age or stage for such. I made the post on Facebook because, you know, I enjoy seeing conversations, and I enjoy seeing people, the debate and all of that. I enjoy, you know. I think somebody could go through the Trinidad Facebook, and accumulate all of the comments and probably make some books out of that content. It would make some entertaining books. But you see, I see some people, some university educated people, you know, they speak with the authority of the academy behind them, and they say things like, Trinidad needs the sex education. Trinidad is such a backward society. We need that sex ed in Trinidad and Tobago. And the kind of abuse and impropriety you see all around our society is because we're lacking in that sex ed. And so I made the post pointing out the reality that sex ed as a subject was created by megalomaniac, population control racists, namely directors of Planned Parenthood, and the content for a lot of the basis of sex ed was formed by one Dr. Kinsey, who was a pervert, a rapist and abuser. And these are the people that created this subject area that somehow some of the educated people in our society are trying to convince us that we need to teach our children in order for us to not have as much abuse or teenage pregnancy or something of the such. And if we look at the developed world, and at the time they introduced sex ed into the world, into their classrooms, and look at the progression through time, did sexual behavior among young people get better since then? Really? We need children to be children and parents to be parents. I agree with that, but primarily on that, I think is the parents be parents part. I think it's the parents be parents part. That's the main issue on that. So says a little learning can be a dangerous thing. And I wouldn't say it like that. I wouldn't say it like that because, you see, this isn't about learning. It's not about information. It's about practice. It's about learning the theory and praxis, using the theory in real life. You see, this isn't about teaching children just the information about something, but it's attempting to change the way that children view things. These are people who view children's innocence as a negative thing created by the capitalist system. Yeah. If I speak about some of the beliefs that some of the people that push this have, you'd think I'm off on the deep end, I'm just talking conspiracy nonsense. But some of these people are legitimately some really perverted off people. And those are the people that are pushing some of these things. So I think it's normal for a parent to be defensive in such a case. I agree that we need sex ed. Children need to be educated on what occurs as they age, not at prep level. I think we need information on biological realities, but sex ed is a specific curriculum. What do you mean when you say sex ed? What do you mean by that? When you say that, what do you mean, Aquarius? Roma, see on the inside, bro. What's going on?
I listen in and out, right? Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Right, so a couple of things. There's a difference between developmental education and sexual education. So we need to understand the difference. And developmental education means information is age appropriate as someone developed through society, the adolescents, right? So let's not give it a strong, intense connotation as sexual education. So is developmental education as it happened in Sweden, Switzerland, and all those other places, it's not considered sex ed. The issue now, as it pertains to the book, I believe it was a foot in the door syndrome, where it tested the readiness of the society as to how are we going to respond, and whether or not we as a society is ready to have real conversations. Because if this response was different, this would have been an item on the political platform.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And I don't think people understand that RIK, so to speak, is a private organization run by people who have their own intentions. And it's a way of testing the public, and then the tender permit off on the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education have a committee, a board that sits down and approves books for children. And I can assure you that the time frame that this book entered the public domain, it has not been on the list of pre-approved reading or pre-approved material for children. So when certain individuals in public are making statements that this is what we're teaching our children, we need to be clear and not deal with the misinformation and target the wrong people.
Correct. You see, Rome, this is my issue on so much of this. And as I was saying, you regularly see, and it's a social media creation to some extent. Well, probably social media exaggeration in the normal human nature. But the social media rewards attention seekers. So people are willing to do some strange things inside of this, and many people, well, some people seem not to understand that some of what they do hurt even their own view on things. Like, okay, if you are of the view that these rainbow people must never enter this country, but you are exaggerating and lying about issues, that does not exactly help your cause. In the long run, it's going to hurt your cause. So you don't want to do that. And as you said, I believe that what the bookstore did there was a test. And personally, I wouldn't doubt they may have had some of these books there for a while, and it's just that it's now noticed. I wouldn't doubt some of those books may have been there for quite some time, and it's just that someone has only now noticed it. And if the reaction of the society was different, I believe a lot of things would have gone differently too. Here's how I know this. The bookstore on the second day released a picture of a book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, as their initial response. But then they still released a full-worded response after that. I think that shows that they even misaveraged what the fallout of this might have been. Because here's what I think happens in Trinidad and Tobago and in many places in the world, but in particular in Trinidad and Tobago also. You could get lost in a bubble. So I talk about this regularly, and I simplify it to talking about Trini Twitter. If you're inside of the Trini Twitter bubble, you could assume that Trinidad is way more liberal than it is. You could assume that your university graduate friends, all 10,000 total of them across the country, are an accurate average temperature of the country's beliefs. No. That's not so. So maybe for some people higher up in RIK, they believe that maybe there was a recalcitrant minority in the country that are just homophobes and would kick a fuss for this. And then they put it out there and they recognize, wait, the numbers of people that are kicking a fuss for this are increasing. And it seems when I look around, the people that are most upset seem to be mothers. And when you're talking about businesses regarding making money off of children, mothers are the most important factor. So I could see why they may have decided to temper their response a couple days after still, because I don't think the Trinidad atmosphere is one that is very conducive for this. And the gaslighting I find a bit off-putting, where some people within the community, and I mean, if you're part of that community, that's the community you're in. But let's not be dishonest here. People in Trinidad now, there's the internet, there's international news. We can look to other countries and see the direction different things go in. So yes, you're saying it's just a book, and it's just a book, people just want to live their life. But Trinidadians can look over to the States and see where these books reach. So if, to me, if you are a proponent of getting some of this literature in, etc., what you would need to do to try to convince some parents would be tell them where you draw the line. Explain to them where you draw the line. If you're saying, okay, we don't believe that the line is here, explain to them where you draw the line, because the slippery slope is no longer a fallacy. We have fallen right off of the cliff. It's no longer a slippery slope. If I show you some of the books that were in curricula around the Western world, people have a right to be suspicious about the direction it's headed in. What you're saying there, Rome?
The point of this, right? And it's like everybody have a right to express themselves and a right for expression of freedom. But as soon as your right to express yourself infringe on my right to express myself, that's where the problem lies.
Yep.
Because almost 60% of the schools in Trinidad and Tobago are denominational schools. Who has a particular belief in terms of how they view marriage, how they view sex, how they view humanity? And RIK is an institution that has been in our psyche for almost 20 to 30 years thereabouts. And the people that patronize RIK is people from denominational schools as well as government schools. And the problem is not that RIK put out something there that belongs to the rainbow community. The problem is that a lot of people from the denominational schools felt that RIK broke their trust without proper consultation.
Correct. Well said.
And people don't get in that. While RIK have a right to do what they do, people have a right to respond appropriately.
Thank you, Rome. This is I probably wrote this once too many. Like, okay, you're saying RIK has a right to carry the book, okay, but why would you be upset with the parents for taking their right to be upset about it? They have a right. And to me, where I got the offense truly from RIK, if RIK stayed quiet, said nothing, just let people discuss what they wanted to discuss, I would have respected it more. You see that subtle art of not giving an F? You are a customer-based business. You are speaking to your customers here. Your customers had a problem with this issue. You just told every customer who had a problem with this issue that you do not give an F. To me, that's where the issue was created. To me, not the book in the store, That response was where the issue was created. To me, as you, Ronnie, just before you go, to reiterate a news story that I've been going along with for a couple weeks now. Yes, there is the Concordat in Trinidad that allows for denominational lead in schools. But right now, our government seems to be in a bit of a fight trying to decrease the power of that Concordat. The Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha has been complaining about it. The Presbyterian Board has been complaining about it, complaining that the government is attempting to remove some of their power to select their own teachers inside of those schools. And if you think about it, selecting the staff is a massive part of continuing the culture of whatever religious culture you have in your school, whatever culture on a whole you have in your school. And it seems like the government is attempting to infringe on that. Let me just brush the article there, Rooney, then you could jump in. Presbyterian Board, don't forget, Presbyterian Board goes to court over new hiring policy for primary teachers. The Presbyterian Board has made good on its threat to go to court over recent changes to the recruitment process for denominational primary school teachers. On Tuesday, attorneys for the board notified Teaching Service Commission chairman that it had filed for leave for judicial review. And here's the thing. I agree with the Presbyterian Board. I agree with the SDMS. I do not want the state to grip in a little more power inside of those schools. I do not want it.
Because what we fail to realize, right? Government schools, how they are managed, 90% of the, and nobody want to say it, but I'm going to say it, 90% of the government school, how they are managed in a very shitty manner. There's very few government schools that parents and even teachers want to go in, right? So while you have these schools that performing at a very high level, the non-denominational schools, why is it the government wants to go in there and display more power instead of trying to understand their template and replicate it? It's foolish.
I was asking this very same thing when I initially saw this article, and the SDMS leader made a knock at that very same statement when the Prime Minister came out to speak about we have a lot of gangsters coming out of the education system or something like that. And to me that makes sense. If you look inside of our education system, you could see the denominational schools function at one level, the government schools function at one level. It's obvious which one functions better. If we had to take from one and give to the other, would we take the practices of the government schools and impose them on the denominational schools, or should we be taking the practices of the denominational schools and imposing them on the government schools? The SDMS leader was saying that he would prefer the government gave them free Five Rivers, Junior Sec, etc. to run, and you know, I mightn't mind that idea. I might not mind that idea.
Well, I guess, and this is a broad statement, I guess it's a part of watering down of what education should be, because with the denominational schools, you get certain values that these schools project. Mm-hmm. And with the government school, is okay, if I get through, I get through. If I fail, I fail. There's no concerted effort to of imprinting of their teaching, their values, their understanding, their view on society. So it's everybody's comfortable with a watered down product and then call it equality. We are all equal in humanity, but not equal in our choices.
Correct. And Rome are not equal in our abilities either. Like many people get squeamish around that idea, but it is obvious There are some people taller than some people. There are some people naturally stronger than some people. There are some people naturally faster than some people. If there's variation in ability on the physical side, to me, it's foolish to try to assume that there isn't variation on the ability on the mental and perceptive side also. I mean, and it's obvious. And if we try to treat the system as if we're assuming that everyone is of equal ability, we the only people that might benefit from that are the people dead center, because they might just get things going middle according to them. But the people who actually have a lesser ability, they're going to struggle. The people who have a higher ability, they're going to struggle. And this is simplifying what ability and cognitive ability is, because it may not necessarily be as simple and straightforward as only slower and only faster. There are some people who may be slower in communication style studies, but on the mathematical logical side they're much faster, and vice versa. So it's a complex thing to try and treat everyone as if they're all, you add up everyone together and you divide it by the n and you get the average, and that's what every student is like. That's insane. And personally, I think the idea that we went into it, every child getting a place, I always speak about this, I think that may have been some of the start of that bacchanal. Every child getting a place. And every child getting a place is going to almost always unevenly hurt the government schools, because as much as they can, I could assure you those denominational schools aren't going to want children who are just placed to be placed into their schools. They want the cream of the crop. So children who should probably still be in standard 3, going through standard 3 at a slower rate to really understand this, they're sitting inside of form 1. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it's unfair. It is unfair. You're frustrating these students. They are unable to keep up with the work. It does not make sense.
And this is where the gentleman was talking about the government school breeding gangsters and all those kind of things. Because in the government schools, there's no proper place for assessment. And when a child who's supposed to be in Form 1 sitting in Form 4 and is frustrated, feeling like they don't belong there, they don't have the skills, they don't have the cognitive ability to maneuver. And there's only one way they can start acting out: violence, becoming the class clown, becoming a gangster, trying to get respect. And so it's sometimes we are creating the monsters of tomorrow without clearly understanding, because there's something called equal but not equal outcomes.
Yep.
We are not having the right conversation when it comes to development, because we believe that development is a paintbrush and we go paint everybody and we should have the greatest outcomes. No. When you go to psychometric testing and you realize you could put two people in similar situation, their cognitive ability, their intelligence, how they respond to the material, it's going to be quite different.
Yep. 100% right. And as a teacher, that was one of my frustrations in the brief time I had teaching inside of the public service, where you sit in a 30 plus student class, 40 in some cases, and if you're a good enough teacher, you pick up on these things. You could pick up, okay, those 3 students are much more intelligent than this class average. They shouldn't even be in here. They are phased out. Okay, that one student is seriously behind and he is acting out because of it. And you have to understand, there's male and female dynamics in this too. Male and female competition, how male and female competition works. Female competition is often less showy than male competition. Male competition is showy. They want to say, I win, and show the other one that they lose. That's the general way how it goes, because they want to establish the hierarchy. To establish the hierarchy, my position in the pecking order, we have to see clearly what happens. And the thing with school is it makes that painfully obvious. We're in here to do schoolwork, and every 3 months we're tested, and all of our grades are known by everyone. We know who is the duncy child in the class. We know who is the smartest child in the class. Can you imagine as a young man trying to work your way into the hierarchy? And remember, this is the time where hormones are raging. You're now seeing girls you're liking. You're attempting to figure out this whole confusing reality business. I mean, you just plop into this very weird world and you're trying to make sense of this whole thing in your teen years here. And now you're at the very bottom of the school hierarchy. Everyone knows you're a dunce. The teacher knows you're a dunce. Most classes, the teacher just comes in and says, you go in the corner there now. They don't have time to take your questions. When you ask a question, they pretend like they don't hear you because your question is for 3 years ago. They can't really take the time to do that. And what does that do to a young man like that? You have to figure out a way to now establish yourself in another hierarchy. You can't leave a young man and expect him that they're going to remain at the bottom of the hierarchy there. You can't expect that of the young man. So he is going to attempt to rise in another one. And which other ones are within his avenue? There was once upon a time where there was the athletics. So there would be some people who may not have been that good at the academic side, and the athletic side they excel, and the athletic excellence allows them to rise in one hierarchy, and all of a sudden they're content. They don't need to act out any other way. They're cool. But if there isn't the athletic, there isn't the academic, which direction do you expect them to go? And then we throw into this 2.5 years of a lockdown pandemic kind of strange thing. Where now, if you are at the bottom of that school barrel, now you're online, so you don't have to pay attention to it. And now you're mixing daily with the street elements. And some of those street elements present you with an alternative route to raise in the hierarchy. You could become a shooter.
Mm-hmm. And then to compound what you said, you're not learning in class, and so I do expect your learning ability to increase online.
Of course not.
And second to that, now we come, and in the middle of the school term, getting ready to close off for the July-August vacation, we introduce a rainbow book to confuse the students even further, who are now beginning to even understand their own development as children.
Correct. You know, Rome, that's one of the primary another one of the primary issues with this. I don't think it's your business to teach this. Like, for me, and I've said this before, I know some people, it may be controversial to some, but I think CXC has far exceeded the bounds of the subjects they need. I think we need to refocus to a smaller, more pinpoint area of core education and allow nearly every other area to be much more of an optional elective kind of business. This idea of doing 10, 30 subjects, it's ridiculous. No. The core teaching of especially a public education system should be the things a public education should basically teach. The things that all of us together in this country agree are fact. If anything isn't agreed by all in the country to be fact, the public education system should not be teaching it, by and large. And when we're talking about the things that we can all agree to be fact, we're talking 1 + 1 = 2. 2 - 1 = 1. That kind of business. When you get into the nitty-gritty and into social living and how families should be constituted. You see, I remember speaking about this with someone in the live before. Science does not tell us what we should do. It attempts to tell us what is, but it doesn't tell us what we should do. So, science could tell us that if you go in a submarine unsuitable down to incredible depths, it may implode and everyone inside of it would act just as a globule of fat on the bottom of the ocean. That's what science tells us. There's no science that tells you whether you should go and attempt to do that or not. There's no science that tells us to do that. That's why countries aren't run by scientists. They're run by representatives of the people. People choose people that they believe are good decision makers. So those people could hear what the science tells them is the fact of the situation, and then they could select what to do with the facts of the situation. So, like the one that is that is, as it were, the clarion call for the community oftentimes. Gay marriage. Gay marriage is not a scientific argument. It's an argument of what social standards you want. That's all it is. There's no scientist that could come and say that science says gay marriage is the right thing. There's no scientist that could realistically say that.
But two things. One, the idea that one of the reasons why the denominational schools is making a big fuss is that the state is never considered to be a moral compass. So there should be no teaching of moral or laws coming from a state entity.
I agree.
The denominational school exists for the primary reason of projecting and teaching their belief systems to the what we call the kin, so that that becomes their view of society.
Yes.
And so when these state enterprise then say, this is what we're gonna do and this is what we're not gonna do, it's gonna have serious problems in Trinidad and Tobago, in particularly with I'm going to name some here, the Catholic denominational schools and the Muslim denominational schools that command a very great respect in Trinidad and Tobago that a lot of people is not aware of and is willing to have conversation of. Mm-hmm. It could even determine who win and lose the election.
That's true. That's true. There are many power brokers that people aren't aware of because they aren't very noisy. That's correct. That is correct. And what you're saying there, I 100% agree with. The state is not supposed to be the moral arbiter because that's not supposed to be the realm that the state functions in. When people talk about the separation of church and state, they regularly talk about the church not getting into the state's business. But that also refers to the state not getting into the church's business or the religious institution's business. The business of morality is a business of religion, really and truly. The problem we often face is in the left-wing views of the world going down to the more communist Marxist views of the world, where someone said it just as I said it. The more Marxist views of the world is that the state basically has the answer to all problems, and I've said this numerous times. The state has the answer to all problems in Marxism. The state, through the people which are represented by the state, could solve every issue within the society. Now, the problem with that is that goes diametrically opposite to any religious view. Religious views almost always state that God is the solution to all problems. So if you're trying to get people to believe that the state actually can solve all problems, you kind of want them to move away from the religious belief because they generally don't go together. That's why regularly, nearly every time that Marxism takes over in a country, they suppress religions really strongly with obvious reasons. And the thing is, some people in the modern thinking that has basically intellectualized a lot of Marxist suppositions, Marxist assumptions. They made it sound profound now, but it's the same thinking where they're attempting to get people to believe that we don't want religion in education. We don't want God in education. We don't want religious belief and ideologies in education. But the reality is there would always be an ideological basis for everything you learn. That's how humans function. That's why that's why the basis of what you're taught is an ideological basis. You have an ideological floor upon which you build. Anyone has it. The thing is, some people want to decide which ideological flaw you must have. And that's where the argument is. Don't let anyone convince you that somehow science has shown that this ideological flaw is the right one. So this ideological flaw is actually the neutral ideological flaw. This is a godless ideological flaw. There's no God in here. It's just pure science and fact. It's a lie, because you'd speak to some of those people and ask them, define a woman, and you recognize their ideological faith-based beliefs inside of this. They believe that that a male soul could be born inside a woman's body. That's a metaphysical spiritual belief. No science proves that. And again, so don't let anyone get you into believing that there's some kind of neutral ideology free basis upon which you could teach people about all information. That's not true. In fact, the very basis upon teaching people uses an assumption that teaching is a benefit. You could have an ideology that believes teaching people is detrimental. The more people learn, the worse they get. And there are some ideologies like that. So the very fact of teaching uses a moral ideological basis. Yeah, crown, church, state, all one. That's why the silence, they purposefully, systematically try to remove God. It mostly leads to communists. I'm thinking that's the plan. Aquarius says, there's a thin line between church and state, and it's hard for multifaceted people, to balance on it. And I agree, there is a thin line, there's a thin line. And especially in a country like ours where the church itself isn't a unified church. There are churches that have beliefs that are kind of already opposite to each other. We saw some of the difficulty with that, for example, in the marriage bill that was spoken about a couple years ago, where some people in their religious beliefs believe that people could get married at a younger age. And I remember some of the arguments that were being made on a religious side. I remember one religious leader was pointing out that if the young children are getting pregnant, what they believe is if this girl gets pregnant, it makes more sense that we marry her off and done. And I can understand the argument even in their religious perspective. And there we see the problem again with multiple religious views in a country like ours. It makes governing, like people think governing Trinidad is a very easy thing. It won't be an easy thing. You see, I think personally multiculturalism is kind of impossible at the very outset. At the very outset, it's kind of impossible, really and truly. Yeah, Gerard, what's up?
I am good, my friend. How are you, sir?
I am well, bro.
You willing to go down the rabbit hole with this topic you're on here?
I willing to go down the rabbit hole, sir. Let's go down the rabbit hole. Oh, Brewster.
Listen.
I cool.
I'm asking the panel, and I'm also asking the people in the comment section, some of whom are parents, and many of whom are Christian or religiously oriented at Judeo side of things, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, wherever the monarchy is theist. What do your children need to know about LGBTQ people 2023? They forget about what they should. What do they need to know?
That's a very strange question. What do they need? Because need is a hard word to pass through.
I don't want a modified word. I'm asking, what do your child... So I think you are a father. What does your child need to know about LGBTQ?
In terms of need, they need to know nothing. Need nothing. What may be beneficial to them, it's not a need, but it may be beneficial, is knowing that they exist and understanding how, why, the differences, the nuances, that may be beneficial to them. But I'm not saying they need it.
What I think my kids may need to know, in particularly with the LGBTQ community and all the other letters that add to it, is that everybody expresses themselves different and uniquely. And we need to respect each individual expression of self. Right? And that as far as my need goes. All right.
And
so let me zero in on those two now, and let's take a 7-year-old and let's put a 7-year-old 10 years into the future. This 7-year-old was academically inclined and they did very well in school. Universities all over the world are clamoring for this young person to study at their institution. Coming from a developing country like Trinidad and Tobago. Agree. Does the potential for the 7-year-old who's going to be 17 years old in 10 years, does the potential for this person mishandling gender politics in a different society put this young person at a disadvantage? Or create a situation where they may run afoul of the law, or create a situation where they may be accused of a hate crime. Is it important for a young person who may potentially be existing in a wider pool than our Trinidad and Tobago society to have a correct awareness of gender politics and gender justice, and to be able to position themselves to function in a world where people do not always present as black and white? Or are we saying that let's err on the side of caution and make sure everybody goes to heaven and act like there are no gender politics and there is no gender fluidity and there aren't any gender realities, legal, moral, societal, and otherwise, everywhere else in the world and in Trinidad and Tobago?
well, that's why I said, Gerard. Leslie, you're going to say something?
No, you go ahead.
That's why I said that in terms of need, with the word need, I'll take the word need seriously and I'd say they don't need it. But in terms of benefit, I think there's a lot of benefit to learning. Now, here, part of the issue, if this is in relation to that specific book, it's all part of the issue might also be where you get the information from and how the information is presented. So that could also be part of a whole other issue in that. But in terms of being beneficial, I think, yes, there's great benefit to learning. Nearly no knowledge has lack of benefit to it. You get benefit to learning things. I agree, yes.
And as I said before, pertaining to Jared's exact question, the need for respect and all those kind of things. But I believe that the respect for humanity is great. And if you respect the humanity, regardless of how it expresses itself, it doesn't matter gender politics or regardless of gender politics, because we tend to separate the LGBTQ community away from humanity and believe that they need a respect different and separate. Because we are all humanity and we are, for example, let's move away for a moment and look at religious organization. We respect the Muslims, we respect the Hindus, and we may not believe what they believe. We all exist in perfect harmony or some level of harmony. And I believe the same respect could be extended to the LGBTQ community. So I don't see the uniqueness and the great difference why they need a separate understanding of their self.
And in that term, I like what you're saying there, Rome, and I agree with that. In that term, I am often concerned when I hear laws being created specifically in certain areas. Like, I mean, if I'm not supposed to kill someone, whether you're black, white, gay or not, I shouldn't kill you. That shouldn't really matter anyway. And as Rome was saying there, if you teach your child to respect people, regardless of how they live their life and their lifestyle choices, you won't have to specify every single lifestyle choice. You could send the child out into the jungles of Papua New Guinea, and they may see some people doing some strange cultural practices there, and you never specifically told them about the people who do weird things to fruit over there, but they see that, and because they have learned the principle of mutual respect, even though they disagree with it, even though they may find it weird, they don't find it hard to respect people nonetheless. So I could understand what Rome is saying about teaching the overarching principle even more than specifics.
Let me say something to everybody.
Good night, Ria.
Let me say something before you continue. The purpose of mutual understanding and respect to humanity is the overarching principle in which we all function, and we as a society, we like to find groups and tribes to separate ourselves, and that is where the problem lies. And we need to be very careful, because where there's separation and tribe, there's always division and more.
True.
Okay.
Nisi, I feel your pain, Gil. I feel your pain.
I'm going to share a story that I never shared before. Permit me. I swear it's entertaining, and I swear it's also going to be very salient to this conversation.
Go true.
Once upon a time, I had this idea that I wanted a career in law enforcement. So I applied at the ripe old age of 19 to be a constable of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And tall, handsome, good-looking, intelligent man that I am, I breezed through the recruitment process. They say, yeah, we want you. And I ended up, after going through everything, the last thing that I had to do is I had to be interviewed by men in khaki suits. I never knew the guy's name, but a fat Indian policeman. He asked me how old I had to be at age 19. In not even 2000, maybe 98 or 99. No day I tell you, he asked me, but hey, if it have a Bulaman community station, his literal words, a Bulaman community station, to make a report, and you have to go and intervene in this situation, what you going and do? Well, partners, I start a Herman war. Because I am battling with one of Ayana Chichi man versus this person is a person. And I literally, in that moment, didn't know what to say.
You stutter?
I did not know what to say. And my career in law enforcement never happened.
You fall out on the LGBTQ question, right?
In retrospect, in 1998, I fumbled, and I ain't the type of fella to fumble. I was always smart, and I was always compassionate. But I was so conditioned, and I was a socially awkward teen. So one of the things that I faced as a young man, because you're not like everybody else, but that doesn't mean you're gay, right?
Yeah.
And then you're fighting that, okay, difference, but that doesn't mean you like boys. And it wasn't as complicated and complex as it is now.
Yeah.
And I want to flash forward now to 2023, where I represent companies in industrial courts. And I went to the industrial court to file a document. And this was maybe about late last year. When this pronouns topic started to trend. Whenever people start talking about pronouns, we're talking about right about them. And I walk into the industrial court, and there is a young, I don't know, because it kind of looking like a lady, kind of looking like a gentleman. And I like stuck. You understand? Like, And she watched me. And she right, because you're calling me mom, but I'm wearing an Oxford shirt, slacks, and Chelsea boots with suspenders, if you please. And the conversation was strained, and the person was uncomfortable. Yeah. And I can tell you how I feel about it as an aspiring legal professional. I'm not a lawyer yet. And as somebody with a deep affinity towards public law and towards civil liberties, I don't want, regardless of my religious persuasions, and I have very strong religious persuasions, regardless of how I feel about, and I sometimes feel that the LGBTQ movement on shit. That's just my opinion. But I will never want to make somebody feel uncomfortable. And I would never want to deprive somebody of fair and legal treatment because of my social biases. So I feel like there's two things happening on this issue right now. We have ingrained anti-homosexual sentiment that is more held by people over 40. We have a younger generation that is much more accepting of the fluidity. It's possible to be a gay celebrity in Trinidad and Tobago. It's possible to be feminine and cool. That wasn't before. That wasn't the case just the other day. So you have an ingrained bias held by older people that is being transferred to younger people. We have an attack, literally. And I would say an attack that is not even rational, on even the semblance or the idea of social scientists taking observed human behavior and telling young people, yo, this is what this behavior is. This is what your responsibility is.
Pause. No, wait. Pause. No. Pause. These people who do this, I have said this before, these people are not social scientists. Do not attempt to place them on an empirical level. This is an ideological push. This isn't about we have studied the biological reality of this. This isn't down to the cellular reality where we can explain a chemical change here. This is ideology. And people have a right to determine what ideologies they want to become the norms in their society. So you said, that you don't think, you would not like to make someone uncomfortable. No one has a right to comfort. No one has a right to comfort. The other side, I fully agree with. I do not think someone should be deprived of their right to legal representation. 100%. But no one has a right to comfort. No one does. That's not how this works. And if you do something outside of the social norm, what is supposed to happen in a normal society is the normal society is supposed to make you feel odd when you do something outside of the social norm. That's why it's a social norm. And people have a right to want what social norms they want. It's not unfair, it's not hateful. It's not hateful to disagree with a social norm.
I agree with that. But when you are setting up a young person thinking about a career in law enforcement in 2023 to face the panel of the khaki suits with no context of what is the correct answer to, does a homosexual have the same legal rights as everybody else?
Who in Trinidad believes that a homosexual doesn't have the same legal rights?
In 1998.
And that was you. That was a problem on you. And your answer is the reason why you didn't get your job, which was very good. I don't think that I was wrong. I think that was great. Because if your answer was the same and you get the job, it would have showed that, probably the police service don't respect, and nothing is wrong. I don't have a problem respecting people of different ideology. I do it. But we can't just keep doing this. He making people uncomfortable. Like, I feel uncomfortable because you called me the wrong thing, and sometimes they don't even know. Like, as you say, look at the person and you're confused.
You didn't know.
And you know something? You felt uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Did that person care that they make you feel uncomfortable?
If I see a grown man, if I see a big man my kind of size, 6'4", with rippling muscles, and he is in a summer dress, it makes me feel uncomfortable. He in a summer dress and heels. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So do I have a right for my comfort to tell him not to come into the public? I don't think so. And here's where I would draw the line. So, for example, me, I agreed with taking the buggery laws off of the books. Because the buggery laws, you have to understand what they meant. It meant that you could throw people in jail for both of them agreeing to do something together. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think the government has the right to throw someone in jail for that, because that's not the realm of the state. And I'm holding my position solidly. I don't think moral realities are the realm of the state. I don't think that's the business of the state. But I also think that it's within a religion's prerogative to say what they think is right or wrong. For people to treat it like it's impossible now for a religious group, which is their purpose, determining morality and setting the norms within which human life exists. That's their purpose. And to make it seem like a religious organization now is something strange for doing what is within its purpose, I find that offensive. That makes me uncomfortable.
So even if you go back to tabula rasa, the blank slate, right? Which states that are unknown remain unknown until it become known. So however you choose, if you have fluent genders, however you choose to identify yourself on that particular day, you cannot hold me accountable for how you feel. And I have a question to pose to the group. Let's say someone who is differently sexually oriented decide to apply to one of the denominational schools to be a teacher, and the denominational school refuse them because it goes against their religious belief and moral understanding, and they take them to the court now claiming discrimination. How does we as a society respond and deal with something like that? Because it infringes on their religious right, their religious expression, their understanding of who they are and what they believe. Their constitutional rights.
And that's kind of where the fight is right now with the Concordat and those denominational schools. The denominational schools are saying we want the right to determine who comes in as a teacher. And the government is attempting to get more of a say over on top of that, which I don't think is a good thing.
Okay. So I would make a blanket recommendation on how it will eventually go anyway, but how I think it should go now. Trinidad and Tobago's official stance, and I've been a sexual and reproductive health activist and educator for some time, so we talk in these circles. And one of our levels of frustration is that Trinidad and Tobago's official stance on sex education is abstinence. Young people do not learn the skills to conduct a healthy sex life in school. Nobody teaches it to them.
They're not supposed to learn that in school. Are you fast and out of place? Are you real fast and out of place? What trouble is this? How is that the school's business to teach a child how to have sex? What are you talking about?
Let's look at education on a global scale.
I don't care about it on a global scale. I don't care what the US does. I have seen what listen, I have seen the direction that the United States has taken and where it has led. And I do not want to follow in their direction. I do not think it's a recommended direction to go in.
And let me tell you why I totally disagree. There's a very 1 second, let me tell you why I totally disagree with you. Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean continue to lead the world per capita in new infections.
And you think education is going to stop that, Gerard? Gerard, do you know in Trinidad and Tobago, where was the hotspot for infections during the 2000s? Do you remember where was the hotspot for infections during the 2000s? Where? Say it. Where?
You remember?
Where?
Do you remember?
Where? The University of the West Indies. With all the very educated people.
What do you expect? What do you expect?
Well,
when you have young people coming out of...
You don't, no. Gerard, you're calling this, I call this moving the, this is moving the goalpost. Don't move the goalpost, Gerard. Don't move the goalpost. Is it because of education or is it because of young people free together? It can't be both. Which one is it? If you could educate people into having sex, right?
Absolutely because of education, sir. It's absolutely because of education. Because
so you're saying educated people do not make improper sexual choices?
I would like to say two things on this conversation. There is no differential records in terms of uneducated or educated people in terms of an infection. So let me get that right. Vice is vice. As long as you engage in unprotected, as immoral sex, there's a possibility of getting an STI. Right? The other part of that, we need to understand we are talking about denominational schools who have particular belief and understanding of who they are and how they expect society to be. So we cannot come to them and tell them, well, why you believe this sexual education is important. We need to understand the context and who we are speaking to and the society that we are speaking with.
Correct.
Okay, so
let Ronnie go. Just now, Gerard, let Ronnie go. She was waiting for a bit.
Prescription, please. I was let me finish the policy prescription.
Okay, finish.
And you know I'm going to send you things after anything. So
of course.
I will send you facts and figures on your Facebook.
Yeah.
In the first instance, people need to know how STIs are spread. People need to know how unwanted pregnancy happens, and they need to know that there are practical steps. Hear me out. There are practical steps. There are methods. Where at the point that you choose to become sexually active, you can become sexually active without derailing your life. And it should not be the position of a progressive democratic society that we are going to withhold vital life skills from young people who need them for nebulous political, religious, or social reasons. That is number one. And so if it is that you were putting me in the position in the first instance, by no later than age 14 or 15, there should be a properly articulated, well-planned curriculum for this is what sex is, this is how to do it safely. That's one. And if we are speaking about a world that one of the greatest bearings on every part of civilization.
Do you teach pedophilia? Would you teach pedophilia in that too?
Would I teach pedophilia?
Yes. Would you teach pedophilia in that too?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay.
Why do you think I would say absolutely? We want to talk about pedophilia.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Would you put a moral prescription on it? Would you put a moral prescription on it that it's bad or anything like that?
We have to, sir, because children getting abused every day.
Why?
We have to speak about it.
Why do you put a moral prescription on it?
I don't know what you mean by moral prescription.
Why do you say it's bad? Why do you say it is bad?
Children are because of the law. Children are a protected class.
Also, it's only based on the law. Wait. We're going conversation here. So it's only based on the law. So if the law changes its view, you would be okay with encouraging it?
So my okays is non-negotiable.
So then, wait. So then, if the religious institutions that run the schools say their okays on abstinence and non-negotiable, how could you then go in and bully them to change their non-okays? But you're saying your non-okays and pedophilia aren't changeable. Wait. I wanna get to the bottom of this discussion. Just wait. Let's get to the bottom. Gerard, I'm listening.
Their position kills people. Their position
Okay, wait.
Destroys people's potential.
So what you're saying here is you're providing a moral prescription that abstinence ruins societies.
I am providing a policy prescription.
That's a moral prescription. You said their view ruins people.
If I said it, if that's what you heard, I misspoke. What I am saying to you is I'm providing a policy prescription.
But your policy prescription is based on a moral view because you have a line. You draw the line at pedophilia and you say pedophilia is a bad thing. Not every wait. Not everyone says pedophilia is a bad thing. In fact, all of the French originators of the sex education movement, the originators of gender ideology, they push to reduce the age of consent to 0. So the idea that pedophilia is automatically seen as a bad thing is not true. So I want to know, how come you draw the line at pedophilia, but you have a problem with the religious people drawing their line in some other place? You're trying to run the country on your view. That's authoritarian.
I'm making a point now. That's not what we're doing here, sir. The fact of the matter is, our religious institutions, our Muslim schools, our Indian schools, and Hindu schools, and some of our Christian denomination situations were good with, and the book supported pedophilia for years. And people said, no, you can't get a pass to interfere with a child because you name Muslim. You can't do it and get a pass because you name certain sect of Christianity or Hinduism. Gerard, that was allowed up to recently.
Are you trying to prove my point by this? Is this attempting to prove my point?
What I'm hoping to see, let me just put it in a capsule and let me deconstruct it. I am saying that the government must intervene at some point and say, okay, our position is sexuality is a reality. This is where it fits in school. Okay. And done?
I think his mic got muted. Ronnie, go ahead, Ronnie. And then Room.
I wish he was here to hear what I want to say.
He's there. It's just his mic cut for some reason.
He paused. He probably got a call or something. I would like to point out the last CXC exam that our nation and the Caribbean by extension sat. Can you tell me how much people left left secondary school with more than 5 passes?
I don't know the number.
Not much. Well, not much, but the numbers were very high. How much of them left school with less than 5 passes? Right? Cannot tell me you are making room for sexual education when it has children in Form 5 that can't read. Spend your resources on making sure that our children are well educated where they are supposed to be educated, which is in school. And he said something about we live in a democratic society. Yes, we do, and that means that majority rules, right? Is that what that means?
Basically.
If the majority of the society is saying that we do not want sexual education in our schools, then they should simmer themselves down and be happy about it because we live in a democratic society. No, they want it to be. We live in a democratic society, but our answer is the only answer that matters, which is what is happening with America, as we can see. It's the minority that is ruling right now. How is that possible? The minority is holding this imaginary stick over everybody's head to get them to do what they want them to do, and that is wrong. It is unfair, And as I say, the majority of the society should be the ones to determine what they want for their children. And parents should be the ones to determine what they want for their children. Half of the people who have a problem with this sex ed in school, none of them have children.
Correct.
Most of them don't have children. And most of them can't have children because they're not doing the correct things to make children.
Right before you go, Room there. Room, just before you go, a little snippet on what Rooney say, the accuracy of that. And what scares me with what the guy is saying there, I wonder if they listen enough news, if they read enough history to see the direction these things head in. California right now is proposing a bill where your child in their school could be given hormones, could be treated differently than you know them to be born without your knowledge while using your insurance. And if you disagree, they take your child from you. Where did that kind of belief start from? That belief started from what Gerard is saying there. Where it's not up to the parents, it's not even up to the religious denomination to decide how you view morality, even in something as rudimentary as sexuality. You determine that abstinence doesn't work. You determine that on your own. And then say the religious institution cannot encourage their followers in abstinence. What we are going to do is we are going to go behind their back against their wishes and introduce their children into how we believe sexuality should be run. And included in that very often is abortion, which, in case you don't know, is a topic where some people believe it's murder and some people believe it's okay. That's not something you get to just push on someone else's child. That's insane. Yeah, Room.
And this is where...
No, it was Michelle.
No, Rome, I know Rome was waiting for a while.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Ronnie. Yeah, sorry.
Rome jump in and then Michelle.
And this is where the holy war began. When we no longer is able to apply tolerance, understanding, and respect to each other's beliefs, because we believe that our policy is superior and it brings a great understanding to humanity that never exists before. And when people feel cast aside and frustrated, there's going to be a holy war. There's going to be a war for belief, there's going to be a war for spirits, and there's going to be a war for minds. So we need to be very careful how we live, how we understand,
correct,
and how we treat these very sensitive issues of children. Children are the property of their parents, right?
Yes.
Second to that, children are also the property of what their parents' belief system until they become 18.
Mm-hmm.
So when Mr. Gerard speaking very enlighteningly of new understandings that he has just arrived at, where he's talking about policy decisions change as the majority change, as government change. There's no such thing as clear policy.
Exactly.
Policy depends on who is government. So Gerard, I'm really sorry that you are not here because I really wanted to blast you. So I'll wait until you come back in the group and I'll hold my comments and we'll get to it after.
Yeah. And Michelle is next. Just a little comment on that. You see what you're saying there, Room? And I went through about 5 minutes saying why that is so. Science does not tell us what you ought to do. Science tells us what is. So science could tell you that if a boy and a girl that are past puberty have intercourse, the possibility is if the sperm meets the egg, pregnancy is going to happen. No science where you say that pedophilia is an abomination and nasty and wickedness. No science tells you that. We decide that based on our moral view because we believe that, okay, this child doesn't fully understand the concept of consent, so they are not allowed to do this, and that's our moral view, so we put that there. But do chickens understand the concept of consent? But you don't see people out there stopping chickens from doing their business. It's not a scientific thing where we determine our morality. the science just tells us the what is. And as you were rightfully saying there, Rome, when you say things like clear policy as if the policy was outlined by science, you are incorrect. And that's why I don't trust the state running these things. I want the religious institutions to run these things. Come to me telling me that this is a moral belief of yours. We could discuss the moral belief. We can discuss the moral belief. All right, Michelle Sudan. Perfect person for this kind of topic.
Good night, everybody. Hello.
Good evening.
Good night, Michelle.
Hi. Good night, Ramon. So again, I was just passing by. Interesting topic. But one thing before I kind of get into it, Rome, I just want to take up the fact that you mentioned that children are the property of their parents. I think that is not really a good view. I'll say a good viewpoint, but it's not a safe viewpoint to take. Reason being, when we think of something property, as property, we think that we have is ownership, and therefore we can do with our property as we wish. And this is where a lot of child abuse and even domestic violence comes from, because we have a view that, okay, listen, you married or you are my child, I own you, therefore you need to listen to what I say, otherwise slap, kick, cough, all of that. All right, I think we should prefer to say we are guardians of our children. Yes, we make them. I'm a mother as well. And we have to realize that all children are given to us temporarily.
Given to us by whom? Given to us by whom?
No, it depends on your spiritual whatever view. Some people believe God. I'm a Christian. I believe that God is. I have been granted stewardship of my daughter for a period of time, and I do my best to grow her, and then I release.
Sorry for interrupting you, but I'm trying to show a certain point in this on why ownership is used and property is used in some of these terms. Because from the Christian worldview, when you say guardian, it makes sense. You were given your child from God, and you are a guardian of your child through their journey on earth as their child, and then they go through their journey independently. That's a Christian worldview. But if we're talking secularly, where you are not giving your child from anyone, there's no metaphysical larger macro to talk about here. We're talking all legalistic language. Then the reason I would say property is because when we talk about it in that sense, if we talk about guardian, you get oftentimes, and this happens in larger states, you get the state getting the replacement of the God in that situation. So it becomes as if the state gives you the guardianship of the child, and the state is the owner of this child. And they talk about this. The United States, during their Pride release, they released a video, and President Biden endorsed the video, where they spoke about the child doesn't belong to any one parent. The children belong to all of us. And they were talking about that in relation to introducing children to Pride, and that the conservatives were upset about it. So when parents use the term possession, I think they're talking about it in that legalistic sense, not in the abusive sense. And I understand totally what you mean in the abusive sense. Abusers are controllers, and it's about control very often. But
my statement, right, is part of what is. Let's clarify the statement. It's part of what Nathan was saying, and even in the Eastern communities, like the Muslim communities and the Indian communities, the children are considered property of the parents. The parents are responsible for moral, religious teaching, upbringings until the child become of age to make their own decision. I'm not speaking of property in terms of the ownership sense. I'm talking of property in terms of structure, development, growth, and forth.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of clarify, because I know we have a culture that our culture tends to view property in a kind of aggressive, possessive kind of manner. So just being aware of the context and the viewership and the community we're speaking to. So just to clarify, and I'm happy that you did. All right, so I just wanted to kind of put that point in there. And in terms of, pedophilia, using children, minors, in a sexual way is something that has been around since time immemorial.
correct.
In ancient Greece, ancient Rome, I think there was a Roman emperor who took a young boy and castrated him and took him as a wife. That's Nero.
Yes, that's after his wife passed away, he castrated the young boy because he looked like his wife.
Right.
Yes,
exactly. He actually killed his wife. And now with time and more science, psychology, our quote unquote modern day society, science, psychology would say that children, minors, are unable to participate in sexual activity. One, and it goes along with consent too, because they are unaware, they are cognitively incapable of understanding all the connotations of that activity and the repercussions of that activity. So therefore the ages would have moved up, in terms of any kind of minus the spiritual part of it, because a lot of religions still allow for minors to be bonded in marriage. So this is where I guess the government would come in and using science and psychology to say, okay, this is not okay.
But Michelle, again, to interrupt you, this is why I don't trust the government using science and psychology in that. Because governments would come in with science and psychology, and bear in mind, I agree, little children shouldn't be married and engage in big people business. It's called big people business for good reason. But that same government with their science and psychology now would come in and say that a child at 8 years could decide that they want to change their gender. And they would allow that child at 8 years to take hormones that would ruin their sexual function for the rest of their life. So by that point, I am trying to show that governments don't make moral decisions based on science and good judgment. They make moral decisions as everyone else makes moral decisions, based upon their internal moral compass, whether it be based on religion, ideology, whatever. But it's not a scientific basis. It's not based on science. And that's why I do not want the government, the state, to get into the morality realm where they're attempting to tell me now that we are making moral decisions based on science. So they are infallible and you must follow them. This isn't something newly being said. Every communist and Marxist country has told that to religious people since time.
Right, because at the end of the day,
is that what anybody is saying, no?
Right? The government, they are humans, they have biases, and they have agendas. And unfortunately, this is an agenda that is being played out. Now, the question now becomes, where do we separate the two? All right? Yes, the government wants to take over this kind of sexualization of our kids in terms of trying to remove the parent from that room. So the parents now have to find a way to reclaim that space from the government. And it probably goes back to what Rome says by affirming, well, not ownership or possession, but
guardianship.
In my guardianship, right? And therefore, I am charged with making decisions. And I, as the legal guardian of this child, do not agree with this. And I agree the government should not really get involved because the government is no longer the benefits of the kid.
And well, Michelle, seeing as you say that, I'd ask you specifically here about what was being discussed before. Do you believe then, if the parents have priority guardianship, do you believe that if the parents have that guardianship, the parents join a religious group, and that religious group has mandates guarding against sexuality? It's not that mandates demand that you do perform sexuality, but mandates demand that you don't, such as abstinence. Do you believe then that it's in the government's place to tell those parents they should not or cannot educate their with that moral basis?
Shouldn't educate the child in regards to abstinence.
That abstinence is the way to treat sexuality. Should it be the government's place to get in there and teach children otherwise?
No, I don't think so. Because they are age appropriate. I believe they are age appropriate ways to deal with things. Again, going along with the cognitive ability of the child. And I personally would not want anyone teaching my child anything, because you see, there are so many perversions surrounding this particular topic. You want to ensure that your child is getting accurate information and that you can guide along that line. I remember the first time my daughter, she shocked her father and I. She was in primary school. And my girl just talking about some topic and she belted you with bestiality. The way my neck was pulling around in the car. I want to know why, when, how you even noticed it. I'm a social worker. I deal with these things on a regular, but to hear from your own child in a primary school level, it's like, wait, where are you hearing this from? Who's teaching you this? I know it's not, but either way, they're going to hear it, right? Because some parents, Trinidad has been one of the leading views of pornography in the world.
Yes, not one, the leading. And one specific area in Trinidad. No insult meant to you all down there, but down penal. Because you know those, you could get very specific with internet statistics. Penal. Trinidad and Tobago penal, for some reason, the porn consumption is astounding.
From a cultural perspective, if we look at ethnic demographic, in East Indian communities, this is taboo subject. Like, I learned what I learned from school. Friend discuss it. Even me as a grown adult still struggle a bit with it. I have to do it for my job, but it's still a little, because it's ingrained in me. And because of that, when you make something so taboo, that temptation sets in. And that's when people are with the internet access, that's probably what's happening.
Michelle, I fully agree with what you're saying there. The taboo side does, to me, how I see it and interacting with children, you see it regularly. It makes it into like a nasty thing, like a dirty, naughty thing. So the child wants to go in the corner and do it, and I agree with that. But there's an interesting balance in that. So some of those communities that sexuality is so taboo and forbidden in, when you look at them in a large scale, so you throw them into the United States where everyone is free to do what they want and allow the communities to run each other. And then you look at the results coming out of the communities that maybe treat sexuality with too much of a taboo. Maybe they do treat it with too much of a taboo. Maybe they do. But then you look at the instance of children born outside of wedlock. You look at the instance of teenage pregnancy. You look at the familial wealth that they are able to accumulate because the family isn't broken up. And you figure, okay, the taboo level may be too much. But this super open to sexuality nonsense, you look at the communities that are so open, it's a revolving door, and you see the results there too. And so you look at the communities where socially they are sexually liberal and it doesn't benefit them. You look at the communities where they allow the state to control their sexuality and it doesn't benefit them either. Scandinavia, Gerard, Scandinavia should be banned from any Chinese dictionary ever, because you're talking about countries that have been the same people living in the same place for about 1,000 years with the same religious background too. To try and paint that picture onto a multicultural country that was a pickup team of oppressed people from different parts of the world is not understanding cultural anthropology, in my opinion. Canada is a poor example to talk about with anything running well. If you're talking about Canada. Canada recently, a man has a daughter. And with that kind of belief you have, Gerard, he knows his daughter is a daughter. But his wife divorced him, and his wife decided, my daughter is a son. Canada took the man's daughter away from him, forbade him from saying otherwise, and gave her the hormone treatment that has already sterilized her. As a man, you have lost your prospect of grandchildren there already. That's what that kind of thinking leads to.
Because I would like to ask a question. If I go in the bank and I tell them I'm a billionaire, do I get access to $1 billion?
Of course not. And this whole thing, and this is where it comes, you can only identify.
So why this identifying thing, and how I feel to represent, and how I feel to express myself, and in particularly with Gerard, in terms of when it comes to sexuality and sexual education and not human development, which is two different things, because we're so keen on teaching sexual development and sexual education instead of human development to appropriate age. My whole thing with this and Gerard is that we need to understand across the spectrum of human development, sexuality is one item, and it's not the entirety of the developmental spectrum. And every religious organization or group have the right and freedom to express their religious belief, just like how every group or every institution have the right to express their belief. And I'm coming back to this. With Gerard like to speak from the perspective of policy. There's no such thing as policy. Policy is an illusion. What do I mean by that? Policy is determined by the current administration who is in office at that point in time. And if you have the right amount of resources to influence that particular organization or political group that is in office, then your belief become policy. So policy is what is famous, what is required, and what is what's the word? What is popular at that point in time. So don't come to me and tell me that is a policy decision. If you look at policy decision and you look at the development of humanity throughout the existence, because government and policy decision has just become a very recent thing. If you look at ancient societies, sex and sexuality has always been dealt with, and it has always been dealt with within the confine and context of religious belief and understanding.
Yeah, Gerard, you can answer now. So, and Ronnie, I know you have a piece, eh?
Okay.
I know you have a piece, Ronnie. I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I hearing everybody, and I hearing some logic interspersed with some emotion.
Where's the emotion?
I taking the logic, I taking the emotion out of it.
Okay.
Allow me.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be concerned with results.
Yes.
What results?
No, let him finish.
As a society, if you want to be a society that is progressing and not regressing, if it's a bad thing,
Wait,
come back and resume.
progressing in what direction?
Let me go ahead.
Progressing in what direction?
All right. The direction that we want to progress in.
Who we?
That we want to progress
Who
in.
we? Who we?
Trinidad and Tobago.
The majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
We.
The majority of people?
Majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
You know that the majority may have a different direction than a minority.
They have a different direction, but this is why I say we collectively need to be concerned with results, and we need to be concerned with progress.
Progress in which direction? Wait. Me and Gerard. Progress in which direction, Gerard?
Please allow me. Please allow me to develop my progress. Gerard, when you say results, can you specify the term results, please? That's all I'm asking. I'm not cutting you. I am deliberately, and if it is that you'll allow me to make my point, it would add to the conversation. I will give us other things to discuss. We have decide the results we want as a country, whatever those are, in the near future. And we have to understand the impact of the choices we make for our society. And when we start to think about, hey, do we want our country to be better or worse, objectively? Because this is not an objective conversation we're having this evening. If we objectively say, because there's always, and I always get it from even before I started coming on Nathan's lives, I'm struck by his objectivity. That he can make a balanced point on either side of the spectrum and come up with, it may not be the right thing, but a reasonable position that spurs conversation. There's an objective result that we want. There's an objective result that we don't want. And I want to suggest to you, I'm about to close, that if on a simple matter like, hey, if more kids know about safe sex, less kids are going to have unwanted pregnancy and unwanted STIs in their early 20s. If on a simple matter like that, we cannot make a scientific, objective decision on, okay, what should we do in schools to not give us this outcome, then we are not thinking sufficiently about our next steps for our future and the results we need. So I just want to put that out there into the atmosphere for debate. I'm gonna rock back and stay in the comment box, and let's see how we feel about this.
All right. I know many people may be chomping, but let me go through some of the questions I have on what you were saying there, Gerard. From the beginning, you were speaking about results. As Rome said, what results? You were speaking about the progress and progression. What direction is progress? You see, and you were speaking about we must decide which the progress we want to make. Which direction is that? You see, the direction that different people want to go in is not the same. This isn't a maybe. You're talking about objectivity here. This isn't a maybe. It is known that different people would like to go in different directions. There are people who would enjoy this country being a religious theocracy. There are people who would like it to be an Islamic theocracy. There are people who would like it to be a Christian theocracy. There are people who want it to be an Anglican Christian theocracy. There are people who want it to be a Protestant Christian theocracy. There are people who want it to be a Roman Catholic Christian theocracy. There are people who want it to be a Hindu theocracy. There are many different views on what progress would be, and I'm sure if you ask all of them, they would think their view of the ultimate progress is the objective view. You see, this is the problem when you try to claim science and objectivity on your side here, because as I keep iterating, I am a scientist. I teach science. I teach all of the sciences that they teach for CXC and KEEP. When you speak about science, science does not tell you what you ought to do. Science tells you what is. So you spoke about unwanted teenage pregnancies. For one, we have to decide if they are unwanted. You must understand these are loaded terms that we are using here. When you say safe sex, that's a loaded term. What does safe sex mean? Because to me, safe sex, the only safe sex is marital sex. Tell me anything else, I get vex. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember that big number. And that's actually factual. You are talking about we want results. If the result we want is 0 pregnancy for teens, the best way to have that result is to have no sex between the teens. And to say that it's impossible denies historical facts. Because yes, there was always some sexual impropriety going on in many societies, but there were many societies that got that whole business down to a very tiny level without having to teach their children about anal sex, sex beads, and dildos. You see, you spoke about earlier that we need to teach the children that there are ways to have sex without getting pregnant. We need to teach the children how STDs are spread. All that you said about need sounds like 15 minutes of a class. Listen, I should do this video going out to a school, go out to a Form 1 school, to a Form 1 class and ask a boy, so, little lad, do you know how babies are made? He may tell me in graphic detail. And I ask him, do you know how sexually transmitted diseases are transmitted? He may watch me like I'm an idiot. They know. And this assumption that knowledge somehow makes people behave right is a wrong assumption. It's the same assumption that poverty is because of crime. No. Negative things, people don't behave immorally because they are in a difficult situation. Immorality is based on discipline, on norms, on morality in a whole, on a whole. That's why you could train university PhD students to be extremely promiscuous. Many of them are. Knowing everything they know about all the dangers of sexuality. Many of them are extremely promiscuous. What? There are doctors that are fat. What? There are pastors that sin regularly. What? The idea that somehow because people know, it elevates them to a position where they no longer do it. And especially talking about children who are controlled by their hormones, who we treat them in society. When you talk about that age 18 where they're treated as an adult after that, before, the reason we don't treat them as an adult is because we recognize basically they are sociopaths. They don't fully understand and take into consideration the consequences of their action. So we are not going to treat them like they can. But no, let's go tell these young people that, you know, if you have protected sex, you will not get an STD. So here's what, we're going to hand you out 20 condoms and we expect you to have only protected sex. So okay, they have sex with those 20 condoms and they forget the pack of condoms home tonight. You think that horny teenagers who have the go-ahead to have intercourse forgot the condoms, and somehow they're going to be sensible enough to, you know, we don't have a condom. Let's not do that tonight, Sally. Let's not. That does not happen. I saw someone ask, what is homework like for sex ed class?
I'm gonna respond to something
Jared
said. As a society, the majority of the society determine the KPIs. KPIs is performance indicators, right? And as a society, we are very religious. We are very mono-religious in terms of the different existing society and different denomination that is existing. And when you speak of objective truth is only objective based on your religious and moral upbringing. Because there's no such thing as objective truth based on your religious or moral belief. Because in some societies, based on your cultural upbringing, one thing may be truth and one thing may be detrimental. So when you look at a society that is multi-religious as ours and then use the word objective truth and not take into consideration the performance indicators of all these religious organizations, it's almost bordering on bigotry.
I agree. I fully agree with what you're saying there. There isn't an objectivity in morality there. There's not. And we see it, and Jared told, he hurt me at that one. He said that this discussion isn't objective, we're getting emotional out of logic. I don't understand where the emotion is. When I speak about the facts of what happened in Canada, what's happening in California, what's happening in the United States, this isn't emotion I'm speaking with. I'm talking about, okay, you want to go down the road, down the Uriah Butler Highway. I am telling you that we have seen cars go down this very same road before. And at the end of the road, we know there's the C3 Mall going down there, and there's South Park going down there, etc., etc. For me to tell you that this road leads to C3 and South Park, I'm not being emotional or illogical. It's what happens. If I tell you that if we leave those unionists, who are Marxists, most of them, to lead our country into a communist revolution, we are going to starve. I am not telling you this based on emotion. I'm telling you this based on historical reality. We've seen them attempt this before, and this is what happens. We've seen the state attempt to control sexual morality before, and we've seen where it goes. No thanks.
I just wanted to ask Jared this one question, right? He used the we and the society and all of this. But if the majority of us, we in our life here, and there's 5 of us, and 4 of us are fine with teaching abstinence, and you are not. So is it now okay for us to the majority rules? We don't want, we would prefer that the state stay out of sexual education in school and stuff like that. Is that okay with you? Because
Is this an actual question that you want to answer to?
Yeah, well, you did say we as a society have to decide what we would like, and you said that. Okay. So if we are the society,
Yes. So in this particular society, and let's use this live as a microcosm of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
We have 4 people with one position, and we have one dissenting voice. At the end of the day, if it be in a voting situation, you have some powers over some people's jobs. So, we know that the majority rules in the general sense. And at the end of the day, I'm with you all. We on Team Trinidad and Tobago. We on Team Nathan Life. We all make it work regardless. However, if we, 5 of us, are wise, even if we don't agree with the dissenting voice, we note it.
Correct.
Because it might have something that we're missing. And what we have in our Caribbean societies is a tendency to try to kill the weirdo instead of note what the weirdo say.
okay.
So my expectation is that I am have no issue picking up the unpopular position if it helps us upgrade our group think. Because regardless of how much of the villain I am right now, I wish you all could see I'm the big joker makeup on my face right now. I'm okay being
that big clown face.
I am okay being the villain if it plants a thought in the heads of my live mates that eventually evolves the position. And I am not saying that what is happening in the US and what is happening in Canada and what is happening in the UK is correct. I think it's madness. I want to make that clear. The LGBTQ lobby and the agenda is crazy and it's insidious. I don't want you to miss that. But I started my contribution tonight by asking everybody, what do my children need to know? And in my opinion, which is okay if it's a dissenting opinion, it's okay if it's the one among 5. My opinion is that my child needs to know there are different people among us. We have legal responsibilities to them, we have moral responsibilities to them. And while we at it, what is different about them is how they have sex and with who. So while we on the topic of sex, this is what sex is. This is what good touch, bad touch is. This is what danger fluids are. This is how to use a condom. This is how to have sex without having sex.
Gerard, before Michelle, I see Michelle light up and I want Michelle to go because, you know, she don't talk much here. So you would go next. But Gerard, I fully agree with what you're saying there. Everything you said there, you should tell to your child. You should tell to your child. I fully agree. But I don't think your benchmarks on sexuality should be pushed on everyone else in society if those aren't their benchmarks. I think we should get a basic ground level of no abuse. We determine and define what we consider abuse. And beside that, your benchmarks into when you're okay with your child's, you know, it's kind of strange to me that some of these same people who criticize the religious institutes for being okay with marrying off people at 16 are telling them you are a pedophile for being okay with that, but telling us as a society we should be okay with the 16-year-olds having sex nonetheless. Like, those two views are not congruent. If you're saying that it's an abomination, they shouldn't do it, it's such a bad thing, then hold that view across the line. But if you're saying that they're going to do it anyway, then maybe listen to what some of those religious institutions were saying and saying, well, if you think they're going to do it anyway, maybe we should get them into a situation where they could do it more safely. Because I don't think condomizing is making it safer, really and truly. Michelle Sudan, let me hear what you're saying. And sorry for calling your full name as you spoke about before, Michelle.
That's all right. That's all right. Gerald, I know what you're saying that you're a villain. You do bring a different perspective, and I greatly appreciate it. I think I came in at the tail end, so I'm now hearing you, and I agree a lot of what you're saying. All right, in terms of making children away and all of that, right? I think if it has to be put in school, then the biology of it, from a scientific perspective, meaning, okay, sperm and egg meet, babies born, kind of thing, could be taught in schools. I have absolutely no problem with that. However, I do think when we start to veer off into preferences, that should be dealt with the parents, right? Now, what ends up happening is unfortunately, parents, because the topic, our culture is one where it's kind of taboo yet not taboo, because parents don't talk about it, but you're hearing it in the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's Trinidad, I'm sorry to say, and all these other music, it's so explicit. The kids will know about it.
Correct.
But we have to create safe spaces with our homes as parents or guardians or whoever, for children to come and ask us questions so that we can inform them, so that way that the government and the teachers, they don't get involved.
Correct. I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So I think that's where we fall short, is the parenting aspect of it. The parents need to step up and do more and have more open conversations. So when parents do that, there's no need for the government to step in.
Correct.
Because the children are informed and can make their own decisions.
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, the government does not, I don't care what anybody says, have anybody's best interest in heart but their own.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. So I wouldn't trust those people with my child's sexuality. The government's interest in my child's sexuality would ultimately come down to the government's best interest. That's an odd place to be. You get into some real strange territory, in my opinion, in that you get into some real strange territory. And if you have parents who are doing as they're supposed to do, and then you have teachers or the state attempting to still get in there, you could understand why people would be rightfully upset. Rightly, they would be upset. MPG says, as a teacher, I can tell you that a lot of parents don't know very much. I agree, a lot of parents do not know very much. I do agree with that. But I also think some of that is not our business too.
Education is the prophecy. Okay, I would like to, on that point. Sorry, Ronnie, I just want to quickly say, go ahead. Parents know how to, so a lot of parents, we follow all the parents, unfortunately. Or fortunately, as the case may be. And I remember when I was a new social worker, I was thinking to myself, if I could have parenting classes to every single maternity case, I would. I think that's something maybe the government can implement. Parenting classes to teach parents, ways of handling situations like this. And this is where the schools can support. Maybe if they don't know, they can talk to a teacher, talk to a doctor, talk to a nurse, talk to somebody who knows, and say, hey, this is a topic I'm uncomfortable with. How do you think I can go about this? But then Trinidad is a multicultural society, and trying to get a one-size-fits-all solution is never going to work.
It's never going to work.
And that's why everything that they do abroad, it never works well here. Because we have so much people in Trinidad from so many different backgrounds. So you really can't please everybody. Mm-hmm. All right, at the end of the day, we have to take into consideration that the children their safety, their health is most important. Like it or not, some decisions will have to be made. But at the end of the day, we'll have to go with that.
Yeah, the idea, I'm not saying that as a country, through the government, we aren't going to protect children, or we aren't going to attempt to get in there and inform and stuff. But I think the main purpose is information. As you were talking about the information, that is what we're talking about, information. You could tell a child what a condom is. You could tell a child how long pregnancy takes, the process. You could tell those things on an informative basis, but that's different. I remember the same thing Jared was speaking there. I remember in high school, there was an argument in our high school, or they took during the assembly over that very same thing, because there was I believe one religious organization in the school carrying on the assembly, and there was one of those civil service organizations that was supposed to do a special piece in the assembly, and both of them, one was advocating for condomize, and one was advocating for abstinence right there in the same thing. Some strange stuff in that case. To me, something like that, the information about a condom, that's information. It exists, information. But you attempting to get someone's child to believe that abstinence isn't the way is ridiculous. Like, the very idea of that I find offensive. It seems to me like you're encouraging someone's child into sexual activity.
Because let me say something that I don't want to be misrepresented. Is that I was not attacking Jared. I was just attacking the idea that his where he believed some things that he was saying is policy, and because his policy is right, and where we live in a multicultural society, and where people have different beliefs, different upbringing, everybody's policy is different, and I was just from the understanding of respecting everyone's denominational policy is more important than our personal understanding of what we expect life to be.
Correct. And I think everyone understands that. We could argue, we could shout even here, and we understand, it's all amicable, sensible discussion. It's not animosity. We're trying to get across the point that we honestly do believe. You're trying to get someone to understand where you're coming from. And as Michelle was talking about with the education and where lapses are in parenting and stuff, you see, to me, this is the realm of social organizations, of religious institutes, of non-governmental organizations. And you don't have to be a registered NGO to be a non-governmental organization. The idea of educating in parenting, the idea of how to parent, this knowledge was generally knowledge that was encapsulated in moral codes, in religions, and passed down through time. I don't think, as I would keep reiterating, that I want the government to be the arbiter of how to parent. I am a follower of Christian belief, so my pastor would be more in line to tell me about how to parent. If I don't think my pastor is more in line, then I'm not really a Christian. I don't want to parent my child according to Christian belief, which is your prerogative. You could parent your child according to, generally speaking, any belief that you want. And that's up to you. When you get into the realm of dictating which belief system people want, you get into a very ticklish realm there. Can failure cause a detriment to society? Gerard, yes it can. But that's the risk of society. You see, the idea that government gives sometimes, that if the government doesn't act, everything would fall apart. So what we must do is give the government ultimate power. So this happened a lot during the pandemic, where they were making it seem like if the government didn't do everything to the extreme, everybody going and die. That's not necessarily true. And many decisions the government made actually were worse off than if they did nothing. So to make it seem like because there's a risk in one decision, we must make the other decision, that's not how choosing those decisions work. I mean, if we were going down that line, then you might have been part of the recalcitrant minority back in the 1960s when we were getting independence. That would have been like, hey, we could get independence and end up like Haiti, That independence thing could fall apart, I think it's best to remain a colony under England. It's too risky. I mean, it's a risk. Yes, there's a risk. Maybe if we get independence, we'll get a lot of crooked people in leadership in the country, and they would squander some of our oil largesse. Yes, that may be a risk. But does that mean that we should remain under control of Britain?
Okay, I just wanted to...
The Insta chats.
Something. I'll be when you're ready.
What?
Yeah, you?
Yeah, Ronnie, I'm hearing you.
Sorry, I didn't. Yeah.
I hear you clear. We hear you clear.
Yeah. So I was saying Jared had made a point. Okay, Jared had made the point that he one thing that he would think that his child needs to know is that there are different people in the world that will might have sex differently or whatever. And to me, that is not important. Not that you don't teach your children that there are different people in the world, but who you have sex with is not important. And this is my problem with the movement, right? They make who they have sex with the most important part of their being. So much so that it is labeled across them. It oozes out of them. I am a man that loves men. You understand? Like, that is the only thing it is just, that is my personality. Nobody cares. Nobody walks around the place like, oh, use a bala man kind of vibe. Nobody cares. If you just walk around the place normal. I have so much friends that are gay, and you cannot tell that they are gay. Like,
why are you gay?
He's a real cool fella, and you don't know that he get his back blow out. You understand? That is the kind of thing, like, relax on your hands. You don't need to know when you're jamming because it's not important. Just come and act normal, right? Be normal, like, just fit into society. You claim that you want to be treated normally. But then you do the most outlandish, outrageous things. And then a lot of these things that and when you listen to these second, right, they come at the angle of, well, people don't about pregnancy unless they became pregnant or whatever. But all of these things that they need to know is biology. Teach them about biology. And I have no problem with biology. You can see what is a boy, what is a girl, makes one a boy, what makes one a girl, and you can do that at different stages in life. And you do the little labels and you show the little parts of the bodies and whatever. And eventually, now I am for parents telling their children what goes where. And even though I didn't have that from my parents, right? I didn't get it from my parents, but I did not get it out there from a teacher who had, and we are overlooking the fact that teachers now, the teachers are studying with a very skewed mind. They come with the already perverted ideas out there. So when it comes to tell your children about different things, it is not just, well, when you have sex, you can get pregnant, you can get STD or whatever. They come to tell you about the different kinds of sex that they have now. All of these different kinks and this. And if you don't want to get pregnant, any back door, kind of shit. And it's like, why are you having a time? Don't teach children these kind of things. Parents need to be the ones that should be having this conversation. And I think the more that we push parents to have the conversation, the more that we tell parents, like, you are responsible for giving that knowledge to your child, is the more parents will step forward and take that mantle up. I think if we keep saying, well, parents aren't sufficient enough to do that, parents don't have the knowledge for that, parents don't have the training for that. So let's give it to the state, let's give it to our teacher, let's give it to health and wellness. I don't know who else. And they'll come in school and take all that right from the parents. Parents will just say, well, okay, I don't need to go into that. And then you don't even know as a parent what they are actually teaching your child in these classes. So the more that we want to get away from it, the more that we need to encourage parents to be the ones to do it. And I think that parents aren't doing it because it's not being pushed. And that is more important. We need to push the parents to really, take up the responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Correct, very correct. And a note, just to note with that, if you go research, you regularly hear about the priests in abuse. Go check comparatively the number of public school teachers compared to the number of priests. It might shock you. Jared, you were going to say something, sir?
All right. I'm only going to say this if you all want to hear it.
I want to hear it, Gerard. Oh gosh, don't do me that now, man.
I would like to hear it.
I would like to hear it.
Right.
You don't want to hear it. I'm joking.
The attitude that we have towards this particular issue, and I know that Nathan is a student of history, so he will appreciate if I cite history. It costs hundreds of millions of lives. And I'm going to give a quick history of HIV and the start of the global pandemic of HIV. And it's something that anybody can go and read. There's a particular book by Laurie Garrett called The Coming Plague, Emerging Diseases in a World Out of Balance. And it's very good reading. So, we have three sets of people. We have men who have sex with men. We have people who do IV drug use, do IV drugs like heroin, etc. And we have the Vietnam War raging and a serious demand for blood all over the world. And all of a sudden, gay men start turning up in hospitals with blown out immune systems and nobody knows why. And they're dying very quickly. And then you start to see these IV drug users who are also selling blood to buy drugs. And they're dying. But you know what the group says? You know what the majority says? Nobody cares about fags and junkies. So, we don't really put any resources into figuring out the problem. We don't listen to our scientists or our thought leaders. We don't try to think about anything else because we know that we're not on these boogermen and we're not on these drug users, so it doesn't matter. And before anybody knew it, Africa, the African continent, which became the epicenter of the global HIV epidemic that started to claim lives like crazy, and is a big driver for Africa being underdeveloped to this day. They got HIV imported to them through blood because they don't really have many gay people in Africa. So they couldn't understand why this disease that nobody understood at the time was a heroin and homosexual disease in America and a heterosexual disease in Africa. It took them quite a few years to catch on that anal sex is the most risky sex by far. So that is why people could have gotten away with having heterosexual sex and not transmitting. And where people had anal sex readily transmitted. We didn't realize that we were buying blood from junkies and they were exporting that blood all over the world, pumping it into people who need medical care because they're dealing with wars of different types.
Only briefly, Ronnie. Generally speaking, only briefly, unless you have it in a certain situation, in a certain environment to keep it alive. But in terms of just blood on the outside, it would die pretty quickly. Gerard, are you saying, to just summarize a bit, are you saying that the treatment, the not wanting LGBTQ agendas to be inculcated on the children, that view is responsible for the apprehension we had in learning about HIV in the 80s?
I am saying to you that culture informs politics. Politics informs policy. Policy informs support, financial otherwise, for things that are objectively important.
All right. I agree with you there by and large, but using the same example, because as you said, I am a student of history, I enjoy history, and you were speaking there, nearly making it seem like a lot of the deaths during that time was because of what people would call homophobia. Sorry?
We put HIV, and Laurie Garrett put HIV at the feet of politicians. And I am saying to you that I absolutely agree with Laurie Garrett, and Laurie Garrett is one of the preeminent legendary epidemiologists in the world. So what I am saying is, if you have to put something at the feet of a politician, what you're actually doing is putting something at the feet of the people.
That's a lie. That's a lie. That's not true.
You think so?
That's not true. There are many politicians who make decisions opposite to the decisions that their people want. That's not necessarily true. And to go on to your point, where you were talking about, you spoke about the scientists and thought leaders. Those were who we were supposed to listen to in the 80s. And a lot of the problems we fell into, that's quoting the words used, scientists and thought leaders. And if we listened to them in the 80s, we may have been better. But here's the thing. Dr. Fauci, I don't know if you remember that name. You know the name Dr. Fauci? Present day. You know, he was in charge of the AIDS response back in the 80s?
Yes.
Do you know that the LGBTQ community still hates him? Do you know why?
I don't know.
Because of exactly what you are recommending. We give so much authority to the scientists and thought leaders because they know, we expect them to really know what we should do. And Fauci lied. He lied about drugs. He lied about how it was transmitted. He lied about what his lab knew and treated it as if he was confident about the results. It was the experts and thought leaders that led to the disease being exposed to thousands of people all around the world. It was the experts and thought leaders that led to the pandemic we just had, because those experts and thought leaders thought it was a good idea to go into China, in an unregulated area in China, and experiment on bat coronaviruses and make them stronger, just in case they're released to humans, that we'd be able to, really battle them then. And what would you know? Oops, it was released. So sorry, I am not of the opinion that the scientists and thought leaders are the ones that we really need to take charge, and that's how we get out of disasters. Because most of the disasters, especially in the 20th century, those 100 million deaths you speak about, were always from the scientists and thought leaders. Nazi Germany, the reason they were able to kill people at the rate they did it is because they put their scientists and thought leaders on that project. And you know what the scientists and thought leaders did? They did what the people who paid them asked them to do. So that's the thing. I don't believe that the scientists and thought leaders automatically know what's best to do. As I've said about 50 times for the live so far, science doesn't tell us what to do or how to do it or ought to do. It tells us what is. We must determine on a moral level what we should do, because over in Germany in 1940s, they figured out what sarin gas and different gases did through the science, and their moral leaders, their morality told them that we should use it on the Jews and Gypsies.
And they told me that science...
Michelle, go ahead. Sorry, I'll answer you just now, Jared, right after Michelle.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I don't know, right? What science has told me, particularly, what this entire pandemic has told me actually is that science could be bought.
Correct.
Because a lot of stuff did not make sense. And people voted for you. And right now, there are studies that are coming out in support of this agenda out of the blue, with no proper history,
correct,
no proper science. And they're writing papers, passing as journals, and everybody's approving it. All of a sudden, we have to pay attention.
Thank you. You're someone that sounds like you're reading some of this. I am someone, I love science. If you asked me at the age of 5 what I wanted to be, I told you I would tell you a scientist. I loved science. But now when I read so much science, it's so thwarted, it's obvious that the piper is playing the tune of the highest payer. Gerard, you asked me who voted for that in Germany. Well, here's the thing. Hitler was voted in initially, but when he took power, there was no voting left. So many people say this: you could vote in authoritarianism, but you cannot vote it out. That's why I'm worried about what you're recommending, because as I've said before, you're recommending authoritarianism. So we may be able to vote in some of your recommendations, but we'd never be able to vote it out.
And just one quick thing before I go, Nathan. I know, Gerard, you mentioned earlier that there was no homosexuality in Africa.
Not true.
Correct, right? Yeah.
Not much.
No, what I'm going to say was people lie. And a topic that is taboo was that when we're doing quote-unquote scientific research, do we really think that these men in those cultures, even in our own local culture, that has a very thriving underground LGBTQ movement that a lot of people don't know about? I've worked in HIV clinics, and I can tell you, very thriving. You'll be shocked. And
I will not be.
Yes, a lot of people do. And when you ask them to their face, you would say them have wives, have kids, and they will flat out tell you, no, I don't know anything about that.
What's our DPP name again?
Be honest.
Is the DPP or Chief Justice? It's Chief Justice? No, yes, it's Chief Justice. I'm calling the wrong name.
I'm not Archie.
Oh, right. I just wanted to know his name. You could go ahead.
No, but so just saying that when we do just watch it with a critical eye, because these guys, people don't tell the truth. In hospitals, people lie to you all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to suss it out, right? So when you hear things like, oh, there is none of this, believe me, homosexuality and sexual confusion, as I said, has existed since the beginning of time. It will continue to exist, whether we like it or not. And we will find a way to kind of work with it as we go along. Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure. I have to get up in 4 hours. Here.
Michelle, on that note, we're all going just now, so everyone could give their closing. I think Gerard was going to speak next, so you could add in your closing into that also, sir, and get them.
Hey, all I am saying is let's be careful that we're taking our cultural bias and not noticing that some deeper thought is needed as it relates to what 2023 children need and when they need it and what the impact of them not getting it is. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome, bro. Ronnie, I resent that. Ronnie say if you pass 10 men on the road, tell yourself 6 of them looking at the... But Ronnie... What?
What?
I don't understand the maths.
You're walking down the road. You pass 10 men. 6 of them looking at
Oh.
and I mean, because even men looking at street men.
Okay.
Regardless. But 6 of them, they look at everybody too. Only 2 of them might look at you.
But Ronnie, you're trying to say 60% of us prefer our own company?
I think so. I think so. I think the number
60?
Nah.
Nah, Ronnie.
very high. Okay, fine. Let's say 15.
Nah.
Don't do it. No, Ronnie. No. But go ahead, Ronnie. Close. Go ahead. Sorry for interrupting you. Close now, Ronnie. Close.
Let me tell you, I'm not closing on this, but if we open up and take the stigma off of being in the LGBT community, you will realize how much of these men, these 6 men that will come out and be very glad. You understand? Anyway, so in closing, again, parents, it is your responsibility. I believe it is really, society have to pressure parents into doing.
Correct. I believe you.
The responsibility is yours.
Amen.
The responsibility is yours, and you only way that we can get things, especially if you want, as the majority of the society, you want your child to have a safe sex life, a safe sex education, and all of that, you need to really want to give it to them. Not sex life, but the education part. You need to really want to give them. So, yeah, we need to pressure parents into, parenting and stop giving your rights away to stop it. Like, eventually you'll give so much and then you realize you don't have any more to give. And by then it'll be too late. That's all.
Yeah, room.
It's lovely. I do not think that you are, Jared, I don't think that you are, what do you say?
A villain?
I think you are devil's advocate, and I love devil's advocate. That's all.
The movie or the book?
Massimo, bro, sorry, I read all of the comments. I saw someone hit me up in the Discord telling me read the comments on IG. I am reading them. I just didn't read them out loud. My apologies. I think I'm gonna try to start bringing some people on IG, because I noticed they hear you all really well over on IG. When you all are talking there, because of where the phones are, they hear you really well. So maybe you all might hear the IG people too. I might try that someday, because I get some requests to join over on IG. I might try it. Room.
Okay. Next week Tuesday.
Yeah, next week Tuesday.
Room gone.
Room gone? Alright. Well, people, this was nice. Room probably knockout day. But sleep well, sweet dreams. Alright. Laters, people. This was nice. I'll be here again. This was the Mindful Live. I am Nathan Springer. We'll join again tomorrow evening, Friday, for the last Mindful Live for the week. We join here around that 9:30 p.m. time, so make sure you jump in there. If you don't see me at 9:30, hang around. Sometimes I crawl in a little later than that. A tiny bit. So I hope you guys were educated, informed, and entertained. This was nice. I really enjoy this. I truly enjoy this. Jared, you aren't the villain, as was said before. If all of us just agree with each other, it makes the conversation even more difficult. The conversation went to 12:22 because of you, very likely, and that's a good thing. People were edified, I think, because of that. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you guys were educated, informed, and entertained, as I said, and I'll see you guys again for the next one. That's all I have for now. Ladies, peace.